Welcome back to The Outsider Edge, where we explore Dr. Ravier's revolutionary approach to economics, management, and coaching.
It's always great to be back.
Now, in this fifth episode, get ready for a surprising connection. We're diving into the work of Michael Polanyi,
a 20th century philosopher of science,
to see how his ideas actually lay the groundwork for understanding coaching as its own distinct field.
It might seem like a leap, I know, but trust me, it'll make sense.
Okay, I'm intrigued. But I gotta ask, what does a philosopher of science have to do with coaching?
Well, Polanyi wasn't your typical philosopher.
Okay.
He started his career as a scientist, a physical chemist to be precise.
Wow.
And then transitioned into philosophy.
Interesting.
Focusing specifically on the philosophy of science.
Okay.
What makes his perspective so unique is that it was heavily influenced by existentialism, phenomenology, and Gestalt psychology.
Those are some big words.
They are, and these aren't exactly mainstream scientific schools of thought.
Yeah.
So you could say he was a bit of an outsider himself.
Which fits right in with the theme of our show. So this outsider philosopher, what's the big idea we need to grasp to see the connection to coaching?
His most important contribution is the concept of tacit knowledge.
Tacit knowledge.
It's the knowledge we have but can't fully articulate or explain.
Okay, so like, I know it when I see it kind of knowledge.
That's a good starting point, but it goes even deeper than that.
Okay.
Think about something like riding a bike. You know how to do it, right? You can hop on and ride.
Right.
But could you explain every tiny adjustment you make to keep your balance, every subtle shift in weight, every little muscle movement?
Probably not.
It's really hard to put it into words.
You're right. I can definitely ride a bike, but explaining the mechanics, forget about it.
Exactly. That's tacit knowledge in action. We dwell in this knowledge, using it effortlessly, even if we can't break it down step by step.
Right.
And this is actually the foundation of expertise in any field. Think about a doctor diagnosing a patient based on years of experience, or a chef knowing instinctively how much seasoning to add. They're relying on tacit knowledge.
So it's not just knowing facts, it's knowing how to do something based on experience and intuition.
Exactly. Now, Polanyi didn't stop at simply identifying tacit knowledge. He went on to explore its structure, arguing that it has different layers, from understanding how individual elements work together to a deeper understanding that changes our perception as we gain experience.
So it's not just a random blob of stuff we know, it's organized in some way.
Precisely. And here's where he makes a really bold claim. Tacit knowledge isn't just some interesting side note, it's fundamental to all knowing, including scientific discovery. Even scientists, he argued, rely on tacit knowledge to make sense of their observations and come up with new theories.
That's a pretty radical idea for a philosopher of science. Did he have any evidence to back that up?
He did, and it's actually pretty fascinating. One of the studies he cited involved people wearing goggles that flipped their vision upside down.
Okay, that sounds wild.
Right. At first, people wearing these goggles were totally disoriented, but over time, they learned to see correctly.
Really?
Not by consciously flipping the image in their minds, but by their brains and senses adapting in a way they couldn't fully explain.
So their brains figured out how to see properly, even though they didn't know how they were doing it.
Exactly. And Polanyi saw this as evidence of tacit knowledge at work. We learn and adapt in ways that we can't always articulate. He also pointed to research on subception.
Subception.
Where people respond to cues they aren't even consciously aware of.
Wow.
Again, this shows that we can know things without being able to explain how we know them.
These experiments are incredible, but I'm still trying to wrap my head around how all of this connects to coaching.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Polanyi's work sheds light on why coaching can be so effective, especially coaching that operates without transferring knowledge directly.
Okay.
It's because coaching at its core is about helping you tap into your own tacit knowledge to find solutions. It's not about the coach giving you the answers.
So it's more about guiding someone to uncover the answers that are already within them.
Precisely. Think about those inverted vision goggles again. Trying to explain to someone how to unflip their vision wouldn't be very helpful, right?
Right.
They need to figure it out on their own through experience and adaptation.
I see.
Coaching is similar. It's about providing the right support and asking the right questions to help you reintegrate your own knowledge and experiences in a way that leads to new insights.
This is starting to make sense. It's like coaching helps you unlock that moment, that shift in perspective that comes from tapping into your own deep well of tacit knowledge.
That's a great way to put it, and there's another fascinating layer to this.
Okay.
Polanyi's theory also provides a solution to a classic philosophical puzzle known as the Meno paradox.
Meno paradox?
This paradox asks, how can we search for knowledge if we don't even know what we're looking for?
Oh, yeah?
How can we know what questions to ask if we're completely in the dark?
Yeah, that does sound like a paradox. How can you search for something you can't even define?
It's a tricky one, right? But Polanyi's answer is elegant.
Okay.
Our tacit knowledge allows us to know that a problem exists and even guides us toward a solution, even before we can fully articulate it. It's like having a hunch, a feeling, a sense that something is off.
Like when you're working on a puzzle and you know there's a missing piece even though you haven't found it yet.
Exactly. You know it exists even though you can't see it yet. That's tacit knowledge guiding your search. And this brings us to the core of Dr. Ravier's coaching approach, what he calls the mautic method.
Now, we've touched on the mautic method on previous episodes of The Outsider Edge. It's all about asking questions, right?
Yeah.
Similar to the Socratic method.
That's right. The mautic method, with its roots in Socratic questioning, is all about guiding someone to discover their own answers through a process of thoughtful inquiry. It's about helping them tap into their own tacit knowledge and uncover the solutions that are already within them, without the coach transferring their own knowledge.
So it's like the coach is a midwife for ideas, helping to bring them to life.
That's a perfect analogy. And this is what makes Dr. Ravier's approach so powerful. He's not just saying, ask questions, it works. He's saying, look, there's a deep epistemological reason why this method works. It's rooted in the very nature of how we know and understand the world.
Wow, that's a really profound insight. I'm already starting to see how Dr. Ravier is weaving together some big ideas here.
He is, and we're just getting started. In the next part, we'll explore even more of the connections between Polanyi's work and Dr. Ravier's approach. So we've established that this idea of tacit knowledge is central to understanding how we know things, even in science. But where does Dr. Ravier take this idea in his work on coaching?
Yeah, I'm ready to dig deeper into how this all applies to coaching in a practical sense.
Well, one of the key insights Dr. Ravier draws from Polanyi's work is a deeper understanding of expertise. Remember how we were talking about those almost instinctual actions of the doctor or the chef? That's expertise in action.
Right.
And Polanyi argued that tacit knowledge is its foundation. It's what separates a true master from a novice.
So are you saying that experts simply have more tacit knowledge? Like their brains are just packed with it?
It's not just about quantity. It's more about the quality and organization of that knowledge.
Okay.
Experts have spent years, sometimes decades, dwelling in their practice. They've honed their skills,
Right.
made mistakes,
Uh-huh.
and learned from them. Through that process, their tacit knowledge has become deeply ingrained,
Yeah.
almost intuitive.
So it's less about book smarts and more about that gut-level knowing you get from experience?
You got it. And this has huge implications for how we think about coaching. If we want to help people develop true expertise, we can't just hand them a list of rules or procedures.
Right.
We need to create the conditions for them to develop their own tacit knowledge
Okay.
through experience.
Uh-huh. It almost sounds like an apprenticeship where you learn by working alongside someone who has already mastered the craft.
That's a great analogy. And it's where the mautic method, Dr. Ravier's approach to coaching, really shines.
Okay.
Because it's not about telling the client what to do. It's about guiding them through their own process of discovery. The right questions can help them see the patterns, the nuances, the things that can't be explicitly taught, but have to be felt and understood through experience.
Okay, so we're seeing how Polanyi's ideas about tacit knowledge and expertise connect to the mautic method, this approach of asking questions instead of giving directions. But earlier you mentioned that Polanyi's work also helps explain why this method is so effective.
Yeah.
Can you unpack that a bit more? What's the link there?
Let's go back to those inverted vision goggles for a moment.
Okay.
Remember, the people wearing them eventually learned to see correctly, but it wasn't a conscious process of flipping the image back in their minds.
Right.
Their brains adapted without them even realizing exactly how it was happening.
Right, like some kind of subconscious workaround.
That's right. And Polanyi believed this is how all learning happens. We don't learn by just passively absorbing information.
Okay.
We learn by actively engaging with the world, making mistakes, trying things out, and gradually refining our understanding.
So it's a hands-on, messy process, not a neat and tidy download of information.
Exactly. And that's why giving explicit directions or trying to force a specific solution can actually backfire.
Oh.
It disrupts that natural process of discovery. The mautic method, on the other hand, respects that process. It doesn't impose answers. It creates space for the client to explore, experiment, and find their own way forward.
So the coach is more like a facilitator, setting the stage for the client's own tacit knowledge to emerge.
That's a great way to think about it. And that brings us to another point Dr. Ravier makes. The coach's own tacit knowledge is crucial in this process.
Okay.
A skilled coach needs to be able to read the client, sense where they are in their process, and ask the questions that will nudge them in the right direction, all without imposing their own frameworks or solutions.
It sounds like there's an art to this, not just a set of techniques.
Absolutely. It's not about having a memorized list of brilliant questions. It's about knowing when to ask them and how to adapt them to the unique needs of each client. That requires a deep intuitive understanding of human behavior, the change process, and the dynamics of the coaching relationship itself. It's something that develops over time through experience, reflection.
So there's a level of expertise involved in being a coach that goes beyond just knowing the theory.
Exactly. Dr. Ravier emphasizes that coaching is a distinct discipline with its own set of skills and knowledge. It's not therapy, it's not consulting, it's something else entirely. And understanding the role of tacit knowledge is key to appreciating what makes it unique.
Wow, this conversation is really shedding light on how Dr. Ravier is bringing together all these different ideas.
Yes.
Polanyi's work on tacit knowledge, the mautic method, the nature of expertise, it's all starting to click into place.
And there's still more to come. In the final part, we'll delve into how Dr. Ravier connects all of this to some surprising ideas from the world of economics.
That's a great question to consider. It seems like training coaches would need to go beyond just teaching models and techniques.
Exactly.
If it's about facilitating the discovery of tacit knowledge, like we've been discussing, then you'd need a different approach.
And that's a point Dr. Ravier emphasizes in his book. He sees traditional coaching education as often missing the mark.
Really?
It focuses too much on the what of coaching, the models, the steps, and not enough on the how. It doesn't cultivate those underlying skills and sensitivities that allow a coach to work effectively with tacit knowledge.
So it's like teaching someone the notes on a piano, but not how to actually play the music.
That's a perfect analogy.
Okay.
And here's where Dr. Ravier's background in economics, specifically Austrian economics, really comes into play.
Interesting.
He sees coaching as a complex, dynamic system, much like an economy. And just like you can't centrally plan an economy and expect it to thrive, you can't centrally plan a coaching conversation and expect it to lead to genuine growth.
Okay, now this is where my economics knowledge gets a little fuzzy.
Yeah.
Can you break down that analogy a bit more?
Sure.
How does economics relate to coaching?
It all comes down to the ideas of emergence and spontaneous order.
Okay.
Austrian economists emphasize that complex systems, like economies, can't be controlled from the top down. Instead, order emerges organically from the bottom up as individuals interact, pursue their own goals, and respond to feedback from the system.
So it's like a free market approach to coaching.
Yeah.
Let the client's own inner wisdom guide the process.
You could put it that way. It's about creating the conditions for the client's insights and solutions to emerge naturally rather than trying to impose them from the outside. And this is why Dr. Ravier is such a strong advocate for coaching without transfer.
Okay.
It aligns perfectly with this idea of emergence and spontaneous order.
Yeah.
It's not about the coach dictating the path. It's about creating a space where the client can find their own way.
So instead of giving advice or trying to fix the client, the coach is more like a gardener, creating fertile ground for growth, and then trusting the client's own potential to blossom.
That's a beautiful image, and it captures the essence of what Dr. Ravier is getting at. He sees coaching as a fundamentally creative process, both for the coach and the client.
Right.
It's about tapping into that wellspring of tacit knowledge we all have within us and allowing it to express itself in new and often unexpected ways.
This has been such a thought-provoking conversation. We've gone from a 20th century philosopher of science to the intricacies of Austrian economics and how they relate to the art of coaching.
It has been quite a journey.
I feel like I have a whole new understanding of how coaching works and what makes Dr. Ravier's approach so unique.
Me too. It's been a pleasure exploring these ideas with you. Dr. Ravier is really challenging conventional thinking and offering a fresh perspective on coaching.
He certainly is. Well, as we wrap up this episode of The Outsider Edge, is there one final thought, one last nugget of wisdom that you can leave our listeners with?
If Polanyi is right, and tacit knowledge truly is the foundation of knowing, then maybe it's time to reevaluate how we approach learning in all aspects of our lives. Perhaps the real challenge isn't about accumulating more and more explicit knowledge, but about cultivating the ability to tap into the vast reserves of tacit understanding that we already possess.
That's a powerful idea to reflect on. Thanks for joining me on this journey into Dr. Ravier's world and for sharing your expertise. And to our listeners, thank you for diving deep with us on The Outsider Edge. We'll see you next time as we continue to explore Dr. Ravier's groundbreaking perspectives.